Manchester City dispatched, and now Spurs have the chance to fully forget the Palace nightmare by turning over a side who have overtaken them as a Champions League team. I'll be taking you through my preview of Spurs versus Aston Villa, as well as all the Tottenham news on today's episode of the Spurred On podcast. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. As ever, please do press that like button. Please do subscribe to the channel for daily Tottenham content, and you can become a member. Really helps me make this content for you. Only £1 a month. All the details how in the description box below. But let's get started with some Tottenham news. Rumours suggest that Mickey van der Ven suffered either further tightness or a moderate hamstring strain when he came off against Manchester City early in that first half. Tightness would likely sideline him for a week or so, but a moderate strain could be 2 to 4 weeks and would likely see him miss all our games before the international break, which is, of course, Aston Villa this weekend at home, Galatasaray away, which you probably wouldn't expect him to play in anyway, and then Ipswich at home next week. It's a terrible timing, actually, because I think these 3 games could really shape our season, but as I mentioned in yesterday's video, I'm actually pleased that we took Van der Ven straight off rather than see if he could run it off and make it worse. Let me know what you think about the replacement scenario for Van der Ven. Is it as simple as Radu Dragusin comes in and really gets an opportunity to get some rhythm in his legs and really showcase what he can do game after game? Because so far, let's face it, with Dragusin, he's only had the opportunity to come in for kind of solo games in the most part. So will it be as simple as that, or will there be other movement around perhaps in the Europa League game as well? Christian Romero obviously came off with fatigue in the last game, and I guess maybe there's a possibility that then Ben Davies and Radu Dragusin come in for the Galatasaray game, which I have to say would worry me, because that will be, well, when it came out of the pot, when the draw was made, that was one of the games I looked at and said that will be very difficult for Tottenham Hotspur to go to Galatasaray. You know, welcome to hell. Their stadium gets really, really pumped up and rocking for these big European games. But also, since then, they bought Victor Osimhen and a few other players as well, so it looked like a much stronger outfit. And I'm not sure how I'd feel about Ben Davies, and I think he's a great pro, Ben Davies, but for him to come in and play centre-back alongside potentially Radu Dragusin for that game, I'm not sure if that's a risk I would want to take. Also, some other quotes. Timo Werner, he said, the last few weeks were tough, but you can't stop. You always have to go on. It was a great feeling to score tonight. I'm interested to hear from you guys as to whether your opinions on Werner and how much he can help Spurs have changed since that performance against Manchester City. Will that goal have improved his confidence so much that he should be starting more games? Or is it as simple as Sonny comes back in after his injury and let's hope he can play all of these games before the international break? I personally think Werner will still be a very important cog in the Tottenham Hotspur wheel this season. And look, I've had my moments with Werner. It's been very difficult to watch him miss chance after chance, but if we can get him on a bit of a run of scoring, and don't forget he did score a brilliant goal against Aston Villa away last season. So if we can get that confidence continued and see him confident in front of goal when he gets into those really good areas that, frankly, he makes himself, he makes the right runs. He's a clever footballer. If we can get 5 goals out of him, 5 to 10 goals out of him this season, then it will be a loan worth having taken, I think. Decky Kulusevski was asked how he felt about being the first team to defeat Manchester City in all competitions this season. He said, "We can be happy about it, but from now on, it's all focus on the weekend game against Aston Villa." And that leads me on nicely to my preview of this absolute 6-pointer against Aston Villa at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this weekend. Got to say, been very impressed with Aston Villa since Unai Emery took over, and they're really a bit of an outlier in terms of how quickly things can be turned around. I would say the difference maybe between their project and Tottenham's project is that Tottenham had to do a huge kind of squad rebuild from top to bottom, whereas Emery was able to go in there with the players that, with a lot of the players that Steven Gerrard had there and was struggling with, and really get belief into them and turn it around pretty quickly. And of course, then they've added a few players in the transfer window since then to make them stronger. But they've also had to sell a couple of players as well, haven't they? For financial fair play reasons, profit and sustainability rules. And Emery has just done an amazing job and has really made a lot of those Arsenal fans who hounded him out of the Emirates look completely stupid. Although I guess if you're playing devil's advocate to that and you're a Gunners fan, you're saying that Arteta coming in was the right decision. But I think if Emery had been given time, he would have done well at Arsenal as well. But anyway, let's go into the preview. In terms of form, Spurs 8th in the table on 13 points. Last 6 games, we've won 3 and lost 3. Villa 4th, 18 points, so 5 points ahead of us. That's what makes this such an important game, because we could get to within 2 points of them. They've won 3 and drawn 3 of their last 6 games. And I think that stat tells a lot, doesn't it, in terms of Tottenham's inability to even draw games where necessary. Having won 3, lost 3 of the last 6 games, we could have just got draws in that Brighton game, in that Crystal Palace game, for instance, as examples. Then that would mean we'd only have lost 1 of those last 6 games, and those little points here and there can mean a lot. But I think that is in keeping with what Ange has been saying about the project. There will be bumps along the way, and the players have to kind of learn from it. And I'm hopeful that after that very disappointing performance against Crystal Palace last week in the Premier League, that bounce back against Manchester City will lead them to go into this game with no complacency whatsoever. It's a huge game, and we've shown in the week, haven't we, that when the biggest teams come, when the teams who are doing best come to the lane, then we have what it takes to really take the game to them. So I'm excited about this one. Some notable stats in terms of Spurs against Villa. In terms of the last 30 Premier League games, Tottenham have got 19 wins and Aston Villa only 7 victories. 88% of all games between the clubs have over 2.5 goals in them. That's a really high stat. So if you're a betting person, get your money on 2.5 goals plus 2.5 goals. 75% of all the games between the two clubs are both teams to score, and on average, these games have 3.5 goals per match in, and the Premier League norm for that is 2.9 goals. So an over average, an over par game in terms of the amount of goals scored. You would think that there will be a lot of goals scored in this game because of the way that the two teams play. However, last time I said this in a match preview was for the Arsenal game, where I almost guaranteed huge amount of goals, and it ended up 1-0 to Arsenal. So, what do I know? In terms of the overall history, Tottenham have won 78 games. They've lost 60, and there have been 36 draws. So Tottenham ahead overall. However, you've got to say, in terms of Aston Villa's history, they have won the European Cup, which astounding achievement for them to have done back kind of 40 years ago or so. In terms of the last 8 results against Aston Villa, we, of course, in the last game won 4-0 at Villa Park in that amazing game. I'll be talking a bit more about that later in the episode. But prior to that, a run of 3 defeats, 2-1 at home, 2-1 away, and 2-0 at home. So the home form against Aston Villa has not been good recently at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. In fact, they've done pretty much the best out of anyone at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium since we started playing there, maybe alongside Arsenal actually. Prior to those 3 defeats, we beat them 4-0 at away, 2-1 at home. We lost 2-1 at home to them, and then finally the 8th game, 8 games ago, we beat them 2-0. So overall, 1-4 and lost 4 of the last 8 games. Let me know in the comments what you think that shows. Do you think that history makes a difference in these kind of games? Do you think there's an element where teams and clubs come to other people's stadiums and like, oh, we feel comfortable here because we've won here a lot? Or do you think that is just bollocks superstition? Let me know in the comments. Team news, as I'm sure you know, Sonny hopefully fit and should get a start. Obviously, I'm recording this Friday morning, so I haven't heard anything from Ange Postecoglou's press conference, but I would say there are huge doubts over, obviously, Mickey van der Ven. I think it's basically he won't play. And probably Timo Werner from the way that he hobbled off, although Ange Postecoglou after the game against Man City did say he hoped that was just fatigue, but I don't know, he kind of took a corner and then pulled up very quickly. So it seemed like there was probably more than cramp there, but who knows. Christian Romero should hopefully be okay. Brennan Johnson looked like he hobbled off a little bit in the week as well. So let's see about that one. And of course, Wilson Odobert definitely out after his disappointing relapse after his comeback was nearly there. And he had come off the bench once, hadn't he, from his hamstring injury. So in terms of predicted teams, I'm going to go for this. Vicario, Porro and Udogi with Dragushin and Romero. Bissouma, I think, will start ahead of Bentancur. And I think Pape Matar will be brought into central midfield because he adds legs to it. He'll add a little bit of steel into that central midfield. He did well when he played against Manchester City, and also he did play beautifully against Aston Villa last season away, where he put in that magnificent cross for James Maddison's goal. So I think Sarr will come back in, but let me know in the comments if you think I'm wrong, and if you think he'll play the Kulusevski and Maddison 8-10 combo again and maybe save Sarr for a substitution? Now, that is possible. Let me know what you think he will do in terms of Big Ange's selection, but also what you would do. But alongside Sarr, I think it'll be, as I said, Bissouma, Deki Kulusevski, and then Sonny on the left, Solanke carrying on his brilliant form up front, certainly in terms of hold-up play, leading the line, pressing, and hopefully we can make some chances for him because we haven't done that in the last few games. And then Brennan Johnson on the right. Aston Villa's side I expect to be Martinez, Matty Cash, boo him because he's basically injured so many of our players. Konsa, Torres, Digne, Onana, Tielemans, McGinn, and then Rodgers, Ramsey, who of course has been on Tottenham's list for a while now, and Ollie Watkins up front. As I mentioned, last year's games at home we lost 2-1. But things to kind of remember from that game, Ben Davies and Emerson Royal started as the centre halves in that game, and actually early on we absolutely battered them. Deki Kulusevski hit the post, should have scored. He'd done the hard work breaking into the box, only had Martinez to beat, and tries to curl it into the far corner from about 16 yards and hits the inside of the post. Then Gio Lo Celso scored the absolute belter from the edge of the box. It was the ball was cleared from a corner and he got an unbelievable strike on the volley with it, and it just took a little nick of a deflection to beat Martinez, but he really powered that. But then Aston Villa started hitting us on the transition over and over again. Ollie Watkins had a goal disallowed from a header because VAR found that he was a tiny little bit offside. Then Pau Torres equalised just before half-time, and it was one of those ones that was so frustrating last season where Spurs again and again kept conceding goals from set pieces. This time we gave away a deep free kick just in our own half. They swung one in and it just landed perfectly on Pau Torres' head, but he was frankly unmarked. There was certainly no pressure on him, and he put a beautiful header into the kind of middle top corner, if you like. And then Ollie Watkins' winner was a beautiful finish from the right-hand side channel, bottom left-hand corner after a slick 1-2 into the box. And that was another game where Tottenham really didn't really pressure Aston Villa after going 2-1 down, something that has kind of crippled Spurs, I'd say, over Ange Postecoglou's reign, which is when we do go down into the last half an hour of games or so, when we're losing in those positions, we don't put enough pressure on the opposition. And I wonder if that's maybe, and let me know what you think, but I wonder if that's maybe because we're so unwilling to change our style that the defensive team, the team who are winning at that point, they kind of know how to close the gaps against us, and we're kind of unwilling to get crosses in the box or take shots from outside the box or really go direct in those situations. In terms of the away game last year, happier times. We won 4-0, as I mentioned. It was the game where we all thought it was the turning point for Spurs, and it would lead us to go on that run to take that fourth place spot in the Premier League ahead of Aston Villa, but the form just dropped off after that outstanding statement victory. Villa actually had some early chances in that game, but it was in the second half where Tottenham's transitions on Aston Villa just killed them over and over again. First goal, as I mentioned, that amazing cross by Pape Matar Sarr for James Maddison to finish well on the stretched volley. It was an important moment for Madders actually, after he'd had some pretty poor form leading up to that after his injury. Then Sonny slipped in Brennan Johnson for the second in the inside left channel, and Johnson swept it home above Emi Martinez into the roof of the net. Then, if you remember, John McGinn was sent off for a horrible late hack on Destiny Udogie, and that led to a melee on the touch on the sideline where even Big Ange Postecoglou got involved. Then Deki Kulusevski crossed for Sonny to make it 3-0. A nice little cross to kind of the back of the box. Sonny had held his run and then just swept it with full power, similar to Werner's finish against Man City, actually full power, this time into the roof of the net. And as I mentioned earlier, Timo Werner's best finish for the club was against Aston Villa at Villa Park last season, where he got in the kind of inside left channel and just first time hit it into the far corner. A kind of unusual finish actually, but beautifully placed, and that is not something that we often say about Timo Werner's finishing abilities. In terms of dangers for this game, where I think the dangers are, I'm going to say Jacob Ramsey, because he's on our list, and it's always in the script that those players who you've been looking to sign come and bite you. Johan Langer's very keen on him because obviously Langer used to be the sporting director at Aston Villa, so he knows his talents. And I think there's a contractual issue at Aston Villa where he's kind of letting it run down a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tottenham go for another bid for Jacob Ramsey down the line. I think other dangers, kind of Aston Villa being just further ahead in the project and knowing how to slow the game down, those kind of dark arts that Tottenham aren't great at the moment. And if Villa are to get ahead, then I think they'll know how to make the game a bit bitty and scrappy. They'll have seen Crystal Palace and how they did it and how Brighton did it in the second half, getting in our faces. It's likely that they'll try the same thing. Players like Matty Cash, players like John McGinn, trying to put in challenges and put us off our game. Ollie Watkins will be a big danger, kind of getting in between our two centre-backs. This will be an important game for Radu Dragusin to really put a marker down in the Premier League to say, no matter how long Mickey van der Ven is out for, I am here to do a great job. And of course, it was this time last season when van der Ven was out and we didn't have Dragusin at that period, and we had to rely on people like Ben Davis and Emerson Royale playing centre-half. And this is where Dragusin can prove why that money in January was great money to spend. And finally, once again, sound like I'm a broken record, but big danger to us at the moment, that back post defending, when we allow teams to get to the byline and cut the ball back to the back post, and there seems to always be a free shot for the opposition there. We have to improve on that. Let me know in the comments your match predictions, what you think the score will be, Hull's score. I'm going for 2-1 Tottenham Hotspur to make it a very impressive bounce back week. Those goals I think will be scored by Brennan Johnson, Dominic Solanke and Ollie Watkins for Aston Villa. And then I've got a little wild card just to end this match preview. We've got to look out for Onana from set pieces. We've defended set pieces much better this season, but Onana has had a good start for Aston Villa since he joined them from Everton, and he's a big guy, and we've got to keep an eye on him, certainly from in-swinging corners and any free kicks that we give away in and around the sidelines of the box so that they can whip those crosses in. Guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. I really appreciate it. Please do press like. Please do subscribe and tell all your Spurs supporting friends about the channel and get them to subscribe to it for daily Tottenham content. And with the transfer window starting to get nearer as well, I'll be ramping up my transfer videos as well as we get closer to January. Let's hope for another big win for Big Ange and Tottenham Hotspur. Come on, you Spurs.